Segment 2 of Gold and Black Live, Brian Newbert joins us. How do you prefer your last name? Newbert? Newbert? I know you don't like noob.
In German, it's actually pronounced Neubert. I had a teacher in high school I had to argue with to insist that my name was Newbert, because that's how we always pronounced it. But apparently in Germany, it's pronounced Neubert. He would not accept this. I literally had to argue with him and say, look, my name is Newbert, so please just call me Newbert.
Newbert.
So you can obviously call me Newbert.
Newbert.
Or Brian.
Or Brian.
Sir.
I prefer Brian. I know that when I first started on the job, when I was in Fort Wayne, and people were calling me noob and newbie, and so I had to ask, like, what would you prefer? And you're like, Brian. And I was like, okay. So I've never had a problem calling you Brian after that.
I hope I didn't glare too hard.
Obviously, Purdue men's basketball coming off a victory last night over Ohio State. When I came out of that tunnel before the game, I was like blinded by that volt.
The
I mean,
neon
just like,
was
woo,
pretty cool,
neon.
wasn't it? The neon was
It
pretty
was
cool.
really cool though, but
Yeah,
it took a
definitely
second
was.
to get used to it. Purdue men's basketball specifically seems like it does really cool promotional things like that. Just really
Purdue's-
executes them really well. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the second time they've done the T-shirt thing. I think around the stadium, right? Last
Yeah,
year was the
Purdue
first
has
time?
done a really good job over the years elevating its game day experience. Whoever that may be in
Yeah.
the athletic department in charge of it, I know Elliot Bloom has a significant role in it. Chris Foreman, the SID, has a role in it, but there's a lot of other people, Chris Pelliadat, all sorts of people involved in that stuff. Purdue, from the Hall of Music people who
Yeah.
prepare the Fire Up video
No
and
doubt.
all sort of the other game day theatrics, to the promotions. Purdue's really raised its game over the last 5-6 years or so in terms of those game day environments. Really made Mackey Arena even more of a interesting, fun place
I
to be in.
agree.
It already was too,
Yeah.
because of the basketball and
Right.
the history and whatnot. But
No doubt.
they've really stepped it up a notch.
Especially when you have that, sold out crowd like they did the other night. I mean, it's just that environment. One of the best that I've been to still for college basketball, even in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I haven't hit the new Big Ten teams yet, but I would put Mackey at the level of any place that I've been. So after the game last night, Thad Matta says P.J. Thompson is the difference. Obviously he had a couple threes in the last 6 minutes, had a big steal, hit 6 of 6 free throws in the game. He didn't turn the ball over. And so I looked this up because I was like, man, obviously that kid doesn't. So he hasn't had a turnover since the Iowa game on January 2nd. So that's 5 consecutive games without a turnover and at least 102 minutes without one. Like, that's just remarkable, I think. So Thursday night was his 7th game this season that he has not had a turnover when he's played at least 20 minutes.
Yeah.
He's a point guard, folks. Steady. He's been a steady player, obviously, all season
Yeah.
for these guys. And his assist-to-turnover ratio is great and everything. But, what do you think about how he played last night?
I think he's been rock solid all year
Yeah.
long. I don't know if he's going to live down the Iowa game anytime soon. When you're 5'8", people take things out on you because they kind of generalize about what you are. And he didn't play well against Iowa. That was the one game he's really been not what Purdue has needed him to be. But other than that, he's
Yeah.
not turned the ball over all year long. He's outplayed McDonald's All-Americans on multiple occasions. He won them the Florida game. He won them the game last night against Ohio State. He and Johnny Hill both combined. Purdue likes to talk about how between A.J. Hammonds and Isaac Haas, they have the best center for 40 minutes in college basketball. With P.J. Thompson and Johnny Hill combined over 40 minutes, they had a damn solid point guard last night. When you look at those two combining for 20 points, 0 turnovers, making the biggest plays of the game. People talk about Purdue's point guards like it's still the deficiency on this team. And while those guys are never going to be game changers, they're going to be more game managers. They have been really solid. They've been exactly what Purdue has needed them to be.
And I think just from a personality standpoint, obviously when you bring a guy in for only one season, you always kind of wonder how that's going to work. But, these guys have been great. Johnny Hill and PJ both, I think, handled it really well. And that's helped it work, too, I think, because there's that competition there of, I want my minutes. How do I get my minutes? Be perfect, almost. And that's been remarkable, I
Yeah.
think. Just the balance of those two guys,
Absolutely.
the way they've handled this
Yeah.
kind of whole situation.
You see that kind of all around the floor for Purdue. Purdue, in a lot of places, would have a potentially very toxic situation on its hands because you have guys who want to play. You have guys who've proven themselves as people who can play more than they are. You have guys who'd be starters and leading scorers on other teams who are playing lesser roles at Purdue for the greater good. And these guys all seem to get along that way. They're, for the most part, cool with it. They might not always like it, but they're willing to accept it because they have the big picture in mind. And I think so far that has made Purdue really unique. Now, we talk all the time about they're cool with that as long as they're winning. So as long as Purdue's winning, I'm sure everything's fine. But you do kind of worry what happens if they start losing. Maybe some of those things go sideways. But so far, so good in a situation where Purdue has too many players. And right now they're really making it work.
Well, I thought it was interesting last night. Painter essentially played 4 guys for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he's done that really all year that I can recall. I mean, you have, so those four guys, and then Hill got 18 minutes, Matthias gets 14, Haas 11, Klein 8, Stevens 5. So a different approach than kind of what we've seen this year. Do you like that? Do you feel like it just kind of maybe worked for that game for whatever reason? I mean, how do you view this whole, who plays when, if a guy, do you stick with a guy who's hot? I mean, it's a really interesting dynamic that
Yeah.
Painter has to deal with this year.
It's a good problem to have, but it's a problem nonetheless.
Yeah.
When you got so many players, especially guys offensively who can be featured players, guys you can get shots for, guys who can really help you at the offensive end, it's almost like one of those deals where you can have different tools coming out of the tool bag every single night, depending on the matchup, depending on game conditions, whatever else.
Right.
What you worry about there is that, Painter talks all the time about sometimes guys have to play themselves into rhythms, especially when you're dealing with jump shooters. And, Purdue hasn't shot the ball as well as it probably would have liked in the aggregate. It shot better in Big Ten play than it has at large, but you kind of wonder maybe if a few of those guys, Kendall Stevens, Dakota Matthias, Ryan Klein, were playing more, they'd be shooting better. So your best shooters maybe aren't shooting the way you thought they were capable of, but they are starting to come around collectively in Big Ten play. So, but yeah, Purdue has a lot of players, and it's a pretty delicate balance to walk. But so far so good with things.
Kendall Stevens played 5 minutes. That's a career low for him. He's played 2 games this year in the Big Ten where he hasn't gotten double-digit minutes. Those are the first games in his career
Yeah.
that he hasn't played at least 10 minutes. Should he be playing more?
There was a point in time where I would have considered it inconceivable that Purdue could have a good team without Kendall Stevens playing at a very high level. But that's just kind of his reality right now. Dakota Matthias and Ryan Klein have given Purdue some different things in terms of decision-making, passing, and whatnot. They've just been maybe more well-rounded players. I know Kendall Stevens has some defensive breakdowns. A couple of them stick out in my mind. There was a closeout on Duncan Robinson against Michigan. There was the Kendrick Nunn buckets at the start of the second half against Illinois, where maybe he didn't do as well defensively as Purdue would have liked. And if he's not making shots, if he's not making as good decisions as Matthias and Klein are, it's only natural that maybe Painter's going to gravitate toward those guys a little bit. That being said, nobody's given up on Kendall Stevens anytime soon. He's shown what he's capable of. Everybody still knows he's got a world of promise to him. Obviously, his clock is taken in terms of his career,
Right.
maximizing that potential.
Exactly.
But I don't think anybody's going to write him off by any means.
We have a question here. I don't even, BSIT? I don't know, people, when they don't put their names, I'm not entirely sure, just to call them by their screen name or
I'd say
whatever. So-
BSIT probably stands for something.
Maybe. So he says, I liked how Matt Painter said he was planning on playing more aggressive and up-tempo on offense. It seems like this would be a key to attract highly ranked point guards. And we'll talk about Finney later. But that's kind of what he's asking, is can you attract different kinds of players if you're going to play a different kind of style?
I think for this team, this personnel is not built for transition. It's just not. You've got too many large human beings that naturally take longer to get up and down the floor.
Right.
This is just not a transition lineup. But I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to philosophically decide that when we have a chance to attack quick, we're going to attack, because when you get into these half-court zones, there's a certain amount of safe cracking that goes into that. And the best way to rob a safe is to get your hands in there before the safe is locked. And that's what I think Purdue's trying to do. Now, they have to be smart about it and not play away from their strengths. They have to keep going to the big men
Right.
in the half court, but they also have to have some balance about it, and they have to make sure that maybe scoring isn't as labor intensive as it would be if you're allowing the defense to set itself all game long. You're getting high percentage looks quickly. I think that's a really good move by Purdue. Whether that's a new emphasis, whether that's a renewed emphasis, I'm not entirely sure. I know Purdue's always wanted to be aggressive. It's just a matter of maybe emphasizing it now, but it really paid off against Penn State and Rutgers, albeit two of the bottom of the barrel teams in the
Right.
Big Ten. But in terms of systematically, I don't think Purdue's going to change anything to where they're going to go more up-tempo, more point guard centric in terms of their offense. They're just trying to get their opportunities when they come. They're still going to throw the ball to their big men as they should. They just want a little more balance to it.
Right. So Purdue was 4 of 17 on three-pointers last night. Matt Painter talks a lot in regards to three-point shooting. He just wants guys to take good shots. And if they're getting good shots and they miss them, it's kind of okay. I mean, obviously you want them to make them at a higher rate. Purdue's shooting 36% for the season, not just in Big Ten play on threes. That's like 8th in the Big Ten. So, well, first off, do you think the shot selection was pretty good last night? I'm kind of thinking about 5 or 6 that maybe weren't. And are you concerned at all that Purdue needs to shoot at a higher percentage to have success deeper into the tournament, maybe.
Right now, Purdue's walking kind of a fine line because they're not shooting the way I think they're capable of shooting. They're not shooting the way they think they're capable of shooting. I know that for a fact, but they're making all the big ones.
Yeah.
They're making all the big second half shots. When you look at Dakota Mathias against Florida, Kendall Stevens, Old Dominion, Ryan Klein against Pitt, Dakota Mathias at Wisconsin last night, PJ Thompson makes big threes. There's any number of examples. Even the Butler game they lost, they made all those threes at the end to get back in, and Caleb
Right.
Swanigan made those shots.
Right.
But you really don't want to walk that fine line. You'd rather have some consistency first half to second half. I think largely Purdue's taking mostly good shots. I still think you're getting the occasional chuck in there, here and there, by players who maybe are a little bit overeager. I know Caleb Swanigan is very eager to show what he can do in terms of his expanded skill set.
Right.
I know you have some shooters who aren't playing the minutes they feel they're capable of playing and have shown they're capable of playing. Maybe they're a little bit too eager sometimes to get shots up because
Yep.
they don't know when they're going to get other opportunities.
Right.
I think in time, we've been saying this all year, this was going to be a process all along. With all these players and this new model of lineups, it was going to be a process. And perhaps shot selection has been a part of that process that maybe hasn't quite gotten there quite yet. But at the same time, there have been a lot of good looks here these last couple of games, too, that haven't gone either.
Let's look ahead a little bit. I mean, obviously a huge game that you're leaving tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
In Iowa City, and didn't go so well for Purdue the last time around, at least in the second half. Here at home, you feel pretty good about how Purdue has responded since that game to be able to go into Iowa City and pull off what is going to be an upset because they're not ranked
Yeah.
as highly.
Yeah.
So technically, it's an upset. I mean, do you like the way that Purdue has played these last couple games going into that matchup?
I think it's hard to know because I thought the number one thing the last Iowa game came down to was just poise. I thought
Right.
Purdue just lost its mind in the second half.
Yep.
People were complaining about the coaching, the preparation, how they handled the press. Well, there was nothing systematic about what Iowa did. They just warmed Purdue up. They pressured them in the full court. They pressured them in the half court, and Purdue just didn't respond. They got Iowa's best game, and they didn't bring their own best game. You saw the poise maybe go sideways on them, too, at Illinois. And ever since then, it's been Penn State, Rutgers. You don't learn anything
Right.
from those games. Then they play last night, a game that could have gone either way in the second half. Purdue kind of finds itself a little bit, makes the plays it had to make. But when Purdue's maybe down 5
Yeah.
with 7 minutes to go in a game and the opponent is really taking it at it, does Purdue have that poise to get through that? We don't know. And I don't think we've seen anything since the last Iowa game to tell us one way or the other.
I think it's interesting, though, that Ohio State, and I think we've seen it since then, did some full court pressure
Yeah.
then, in that game, which I don't, generally, that's not really something that these teams are going to do a lot, but I think you see it one time that it worked in one instance. Obviously, college coaches are smart. They're going to come at you and make sure
Right.
you can do it again. So, I mean, there were at least 5 or 6 times that Ohio State decided, like, we're going to press you and see how you can handle it, and obviously Purdue
Yeah.
didn't have any turnovers against it, so.
The moral of the story
Okay.
is that Iowa game, I know it sounds cliche, but that was more about Purdue than it was about Iowa. Iowa didn't do anything systematically in terms of what they were doing with their pressure that Purdue hadn't handled 20 minutes earlier in the first half. They just lost their poise, they lost their mind, and they just didn't handle it as well in the second half. And some other things happened. Iowa was able to get some runouts, but a lot of Purdue's turnovers happened in the half court.
Right.
Too. It wasn't just the pressure. There were like 2 turnovers that
Right.
were pressure related.
Right.
Going back and looking at it. So it was just collective imbalance of their poise that really did them in. So if Purdue just keeps a cool head about it at Iowa this weekend, things might turn out very differently. But they got to stop Jared Utoff, first of all. They got to slow him down. They got to do a good job defending Mike Giselle again. And then if they're able to stay in the game with their defense and score enough to stay around on the boards and whatnot, then that stuff matters. But Purdue's got to keep its cool head about it.
Utah, it's crazy to me because I just feel like he takes such off-balance, crappy shots, and they're exactly what he wants to take, And it's just, it's remarkable to me that they go in.
Yeah.
I mean, after that game, I'm like, whatever he was, great percentage. And I'm like, most of those seem like, why are you taking that shot? So, but he's so long, obviously, that he's able to do different things. But
Yeah.
in terms of relationally to the rest of the Big Ten, I mean, he's no doubt first-team all-conference player. But I mean, nationally, is he one of the best players in the country?
I don't know. I don't know who's playing better.
Yeah,
when
I mean,
you look
with
at
his
what
skill
he
set.
did at Iowa State, when you look at what he did at Purdue, when you look at what he's done consistently at both ends of the floor, he's probably Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year right now
Yeah,
too.
no doubt.
Very possibly, he's Big Ten Player of the Year probably right now.
Yeah.
He's got to be an All-American as
Yeah.
of right now. I mean, he's just a really good player. He's kind of got that sort of Dirk Nowitzki to him, where every shot looks horrible.
It does.
It's all wrist.
Yeah.
It's all just off balance nonsense, and everything goes in. Matt Painter used to say about E'Twaun Moore that he makes uncomfortable shots comfortable. That's his deal, and that's kind of Jared Utoff's deal. It makes him a really, really difficult cover because he's so versatile, can play with his back to the basket, can make jumpers, can make turnarounds. He can handle the ball a little bit.
Yep.
It's really no wonder Bo Ryan was so mad when he left Wisconsin.
Yeah. It's crazy because Purdue played really good defense on him a lot, and he still made the basket. Just because he's fallen away and you just can't block it. I mean, if you're Ray or whoever they put, it's crazy.
Good offense beats good defense every day of the week.
That's true. Let's turn our attention to recruiting for men's basketball real quickly before we take a break, come back, talk a little football recruiting and coaching staff changes and those things of that nature. But so recently, you saw Isaiah Thompson, which PJ, little brother.
He's taller.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I'm almost taller than PJ, so and Fennessy, the guy I had mentioned earlier. What do you think of those guys? I mean, 2018, 2019 class, which is just crazy, but obviously that's kind of what it is right now. But what were your impressions of them? And I don't know if you can say where Purdue stands at this point because it's obviously far out.
I'll start with Robert Fennessy, the 2018. He's a sophomore at McCutcheon here, right across the river. Point guard, very understated game, very understated personality, great temperament to him for a point guard, exactly what you're looking for from a mentality standpoint. Very unselfish player, has some height to him, has some length to him. Not sure he's quite the jump shooter yet, but he has a lot of opportunity, obviously, to get better before he gets to the college level. Can really get to the basket, can really accelerate in the open floor. Good decision maker, like I said, very unselfish. Just seems like if you watch him once, I don't think you pick up all the nuance in terms of what he does, but when you watch him a couple times, you start to realize that this is a really solid guy who may never be an unbelievable player, an All-American, a star at the college level, but he can be a really good player you win with. There's a lot of substance to him. Isaiah Thompson, I'm sorry.
That'd be weird.
I've got my point guards mixed up. John Stockton, no. Isaiah Thompson is P.J. Thompson's younger brother. He's a freshman at Zionsville High School. A scoring point guard. He's taller than PJ. He's longer than PJ. He's got the opposite of the body. He's not, the little fire hydrant that PJ Thompson is. He's more of a.
Oh, he'd love that.
He's a sprout. He's tall, skinny, and long.
Fire hydrant.
More of a scoring point guard, like I said. I wonder if he doesn't grow into a 2 long term. Obviously, it's really hard to know when a guy's this young. Their body's going to come a long way. Isaiah can really score. Can really score. Can really shoot the mid-range jumper. Can shoot threes. Can get to the basket. Can get out in transition. He's got to grow. He's got to get stronger. He's got to be able to finish around the basket. But he's very much on a trajectory to be a pretty good high school player, a pretty good prospect. I'd be really surprised if he's not a guy Purdue doesn't really seriously recruit.
Do you like going and watching those games?
Love it.
Do you? I mean, you kind of have
Favorite
to.
part of my job.
Did you just go to one that wasn't that one, or did you see somebody again?
I saw Fennessy twice.
Okay.
Purdue offered him. I saw him last Friday night, and Purdue offered him. I flew in from Jersey, and he was playing at Crawfordsville.
Okay, that's what
so I just came over 74, saw him play at Crawfordsville on my way home. So
It's a lot of traveling, folks, for sure. Next week you have Iowa and Minnesota both on the road in like a 3-day span, so we'll pray for good weather for that.
So people know about my weather phobia.
Yes, it's not good. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back with more from Brian about football and football recruiting. Stick around.